Man, this has been a crazy month. Lots of announcements, lots of posts. The Kickstarter is absolutely going crazy thanks to you guys. And we even have Dungeons & Dragons themselves butting in on all the excitement here at DC20, talking about their weapon system. Well, I gotta throw the DC20 hat into the ring of weapon systems because we have absolutely reworked from the ground up the DC20 weapon system in the 0.8 beta for DC20. That's right, in a matter of days from the point of you watching this video, the 0.8 of the beta releases to all Kickstarter backers, and in that will be this brand new weapon system. And I normally don't bring up Dungeons & Dragons, and I'm not trying to do a contest here, but I am going to showcase and give my opinions about some of the things and directions they went, and then show what's going on with this one. Because I think the way that we've done weapons is just more fun, especially when we talk about the completely customizable weapon system where you can build your own weapon using the system. Let's go. And if any of this stuff interests you, then go down, click the link down in the description, check out the Kickstarter, and join the 16,000 people now at this point who are interested in DC20 and what we're doing here. And what we're doing here is weapons. Let's go. Diving through the master document here, there's really three things to talk about here: weapon types, weapon styles, and weapon properties. The types are pretty simple: melee, ranged. And if you're wondering about throwing weapons, those are considered melee weapons, and they have a property for that. We'll get into it. And the defaults for these, all melee weapons are one-handed. They could be versatile, meaning you could use one or the other, or they could be two-handed, but the default is one-handed. And all ranged weapons are considered to be two-handed because you take two hands to fire a bow, two hands to fire a crossbow, you get the idea. But some properties might change that up. Let's keep going. Next up are weapon styles, and this is what Dungeons & Dragons did try and do their version of, and this is where things get a little bit different. Dungeons & Dragons just added a bunch of new weapon masteries that, in my opinion, aren't very intuitive, and when you read the word, it doesn't really click exactly what it does. Some of them deal automatic damage, which I think is almost a Matt Colville's version of the game thing. Automatic damage just happens. Feels a little weird in D&D, but they have a whole bunch of these options, and it's kind of more so goes to how you're using the weapon, which in DC20 is represented by maneuvers. If you're not familiar with DC20, all martials are able to take maneuvers, where you spend your action points. You have 4 action points in a turn. You can take an attack, but you can spend in a maneuver to modify your attack in some way, trying to slow the enemy down, trying to knock them down, knock them back, all that stuff. D&D's new iteration is taking how you're using the weapon and weapon properties, and I feel like mixing them and blurring them together. So I'm not the biggest fan of that, but here is what DC20 is trying to do with weapon styles. You have a weapon style passive. This is the passive you get to use while using this weapon. This just is a +1 damage on a certain kind of thing. Easy to remember because every single one of these is just +1 damage under a certain condition. And the conditions kind of make sense for the thing that you're using it for. So axe, you deal +1 damage against bleeding. Bows deal more damage against targets that are slowed, which makes more sense because if a target is moving slower, they're easier to hit with the bow. The chained weapon style is better against targets that have a shield or behind cover because it can go around it. Crossbows deal additional damage against the last creature that you just attacked because you've honed in your sights. That makes sense for ranged weapons. As soon as I'm aiming towards a target and I've fired a shot at them, I'm now better able to make a second shot at them. You've honed in your sights, you're tracking it down, dialing it in. Fists are good against grappled, hammer's good against dazed or petrified targets, pick is for impaired targets, spear is unique. +1 damage if you've moved 2 spaces towards the target, charging in with a spear, lunging at him. Or if you're attacking a target on a mount, which is more situational, but you get the idea. Staff is good against hindered targets, sword is good against exposed targets. I think that was an iconic thing. Swords are the most general, most iconic weapons in all of fantasy games. So them being paired with exposed being in condition where a creature has advantage against them, they're exposed to attacks, so you get +1 damage. And whips might be my favorite, as you get +1 damage if you attack them farther than 1 space away from you with it right at the end of that maximum whip range. Okay, Zach, let's try that again and give me an actual whip sound effect. So now we have weapon styles. You don't have to memorize them all. It's just really the weapon that you're currently using. It pertains to a certain condition in that exact situation, and it gives you an opportunity to be able to change the style that you want to use your weapon in based on what you're fighting. Now, this is different from how it used to be in 0.7 and before. Weapons used to have an active maneuver that you could do with that weapon and a passive that that weapon could do. One, that is a lot to remember, each weapon having 2 things, so this does cut that down quite a bit. So now weapons only have that passive that pertains exactly towards that style. And those weapon maneuvers, yes, have been removed from the game, and I know that might upset some people because they were overpowered compared to normal maneuvers. What we saw through playtesting is a lot of people used the maneuvers and they thought all these maneuvers were cool, but then they realized that the weapon maneuvers were tuned to be a little bit better on purpose, honestly. And then they would just only use the weapon maneuvers and they never used any of the other maneuvers. So that's the bad news, but the good news is there's now more maneuvers for marshals to be able to choose and pick from. You now have bleed maneuvers, you have impair maneuvers, you have more maneuvers that you have access to for any weapon you want to use. Because it used to be you could only make a target bleed with an axe, but now you can make a target bleed with a spear if you want. That's the same idea philosophy I just talked about with Dungeons & Dragons, where they have tied them together and locked them into these styles. So I've taken my own advice here and separated those. So now bleed and impair and all these other maneuvers that used to be tied into specific weapon maneuvers are now access to all martials. But the passives stay with your weapon. So next part, weapon properties. These are the things that make the weapons unique from each other, and each weapon essentially has two properties. And I'm going to give you a little hint, sneak peek right now of something to come at the end of the video is the custom weapon system. If you notice, I'm going to talk about these properties real quick. We'll go over them real fast. Basically, all the weapon properties have been balanced out, but we'll talk about that in the custom system after this. All these are also pretty straightforward. Ammo means it has some sort of projectile that you fire. Concealable gives you advantage on the first attack you make against a creature that didn't know you had a weapon. The new addition here and change is you can only gain this benefit against a creature once per combat. It's not like you throw a dagger out of nowhere and then you do it again and they didn't see it coming. A new property here into the beta is the guard property, gaining 1 physical defense while wielding this weapon. The heavy property is everybody's favorite. It deals +1 damage, and it's the strongest property in the game, and it's been balanced as such. Impact property still here. You deal +1 damage, but only if you beat the target's defense by 5, which is called a heavy hit, so you gain +1 damage on those heavy hits. Long range increases the range of ranged weapons. It's a lot hard to say, but it increases it from 15 spaces, which is a pretty long distance. If you count 15 spaces on a battle map, that's usually a pretty solid amount, but now it increases that to 30 spaces, so you're for sure gonna hit them. Or maybe not hit them, but they'll at least be in range. Next up is multifaceted. Now, this one's really interesting. I haven't seen this one done in a game before, but basically, you know how there's some weapons, like a warhammer, where one side of the weapon is like this blunt object, and the other side is really pointy, like a pick. Zack put that weapon up on the screen. But basically, multifaceted gives you 2 styles that you can choose and go back and forth between. So if a weapon has the multifaceted property, it would also say what 2 styles that is. So for this hypothetical weapon right here, it would have hammer and the pick style at once. You wouldn't gain the benefits of both of them with one single swing, but you could basically imagine yourself flipping it from one side, hitting with a hammer side, flipping it the very next attack, and hitting it with the pointy end. Moving on, then we have reach up next, where it just increases the melee range by 1 space. And then maybe my favorite property, I do love me some crossbows, but reload. Reload increases the weapon damage you deal by 1. But it costs an extra AP to fire in a free hand to reload the weapon. This is mainly used in crossbows, where a bow would deal 1 damage and a crossbow would deal 2 damage, because it's 1 extra damage from having that reload property. This balances out and offsets the action economy cost of you having to spend an action point to reload that next bolt. But it packs that extra punch. The silent property is a new one, where when you make a ranged attack while hidden, you retain the unheard property. No one can hear you when you shoot it. Now, if you pop out from behind cover and they see you, they still see you, but at least if you weren't seen and you make a shot, you're silent. Next 2 properties go hand in hand are toss and thrown. Toss gives a melee weapon a range of 5 spaces, and a thrown property, which requires the toss property if you're stacking it together, increases the range by another 5 spaces, giving you a 10 space thrown range. And once we get to the custom weapon section at the end, you're really going to see where this shines, because you can actually choose when you make your own custom weapon, how far do I want it to, do I want it to be 5 spaces, or I really want to spend both points and go 10 spaces? Now these next 2 properties, two-handed and unwieldy, they actually give you an extra point to use, because this is technically a negative. This is some sort of penalty that you get whenever you have this property. Two-handed requires that you put both hands on the weapon, no longer having a free hand to wield it. And unwieldy makes the weapon a bit hard to use within 1 space of you, so you have disadvantage on attacks within 1 space of you. So yes, these 2 do come with a negative side effect, but they do give you 1 extra point when we get to the weapon system. Then lastly is versatile. The weapon can be wielded with 1 or 2 hands, but this time, whenever you wield the weapon with 2 hands, you gain a +2 bonus to hit. So at level 1, your plus to hit with an attack on a weapon is usually 4. So with 1 hand, it would be a +4 to hit. But with a versatile weapon, put that second hand on there, now it's a +6, giving you a better chance to hit and a better chance to possibly deal more damage if you get that heavier brutal hit. Timeout. I feel like it's been a long time since I've done a timeout. Anyway, this is a weapon rework. What I'm about to show you is the new table for weapons and the new custom system of how to build them and all that kind of stuff. But what you may notice is the weapon damage has, yes, been tuned down. And before all my martial friends out there freak out and they go home and they get all crazy, listen up. If you've played DC20 in any way, shape, or form, you know that martials deal a lot of damage, especially those two-handed, heavy-wielding. It's insane. 3 base damage for those weapons to be able to deal the 3 damage, and they get heavy hits, and impact property brings it to 4, and a heavy hit would bring it to 5, and then, oh my gosh, they're starting to just absolutely chunk out damage. And if you compare that damage to cantrips, spellcasters have been operating definitely way too low. So we have 2 options here. We have martials, and we have spellcasters. Currently underperforming, currently currently definitely overperforming, even if you run the numbers. So the two options would be either nerf marshals or we buff spellcasters. And here's the problem. If we buff spellcasters, now we start to get that creep, not power creep, but the numbers creep. The health would have to start to go up. The monster health has to start to go up, especially at level 1 and 2, whenever the damage should be at its lowest. And this is the beta, so I thought it was a perfect time to be able to take this discrepancy and bring the marshals back to in line with where the current cantrips are. And cantrips in general deal 1 or 2 damage. That's it. There's not a cantrip in the game that deals 3 damage, much less also has impact property and all that stuff. So the weapons you're about to see are 1 damage less than they used to be, essentially. So now it's actually more simple, and this also lets us do the custom weapon system. So if you're hesitant about the weapons you just see, and you're like, oh man, I'm going to deal less damage now. Okay. But trust me, the health of the game is going to be in a much better spot and far more balanced, and this opens up the ability for us to do this custom weapon system. Because now all weapons deal 1 damage unless they have the heavy property, which means they deal 2 damage, just like how cantrips deal 1 or 2 damage. And yes, there's absolutely a way to get a big, huge weapon that deals 2 damage and has the impact property. It's all there. But basically, it's just 1 less damage, which helps out the monsters, helps out the spellcasters, helps out the overall balance of the game. And if anybody has shown that they love their marshals, it's me. I think DC20 does a great job of maneuvers, stamina, techniques, all that stuff. Marshals are going to be solid. So anyway, let's show you some weapons. Here we go. Now, I'm not going to show you each one and talk about each and every one, talking about each property, what it does, all that kind of stuff. You can pause the video and see and kind of look at what's going on. If you just remember all the properties we just talked about, you could also go back and see those and kind of see what's the big picture here. So how this is organized is we first thought our one-handed weapons. These are just straight up one-handed, and then we got versatile, and then we got two-handed. So the first column you see here is the style. What kind of style is it? This is the axe category, fist category, hammer, pick, spear, sword, whip, all that stuff. And then this is the actual weapon. We got throwing stars, we got hand axes, we got brass knuckles. But a few examples here, you got your hand axe, nice little throwing hand axe. Its 2 properties are concealable, easy to hide enough to stash somewhere, pull out and throw it, right? Didn't see it coming. And toss, which is only 5 spaces. And those would be the exact same 2 properties, concealable toss. And then over here, the throwing dagger, concealable toss. Well, it's the same weapon. What's the difference? Actually, this is the axe passive for the hand axe, throwing star, sickle, all that stuff. And then down here for the throwing dagger, it's the sword property, which are very different passives. And then if you still want to toss something, but give it the impact property so it hits a little bit harder just in case you roll high, you got the light hammer. And if you really want to throw something farther than just 5 spaces, instead of just toss, and you want to upgrade that to throw, which is 10 spaces, there's your javelin. And then we got our whip down here with reach and impact. And remember that multifaceted thing we talked about earlier? A rapier is a perfect example of this. Multifaceted means it has 2 weapon styles, being sword and spear. Sword being all the little slashes you can do with it, and rapier, the spear part being all the thrusts. And overall, if you didn't tell, I should have mentioned this, the damage property, they all deal 1 damage. Now overall, I do think already this is a big improvement from the weapon system of the previous 0.7 and all of the before, because basically the old weapon system, and I'll have Zack do a big scroll through of it right now, is basically you had 5 weapons for every single weapon style, some of them being really, they kind of were forced into these categories, and there's just a bunch of weapons and some of them repeats and all that stuff. And what we saw in playtesting is pretty much all marshals just use the big old heavy hitting 2-handers, and that's it. Or you use the 1-hander that dealt 2 damage, and that's it. Not a lot of cool choice there, not a lot of cool stuff going on. So then, moving on, versatile. Versatile weapons, we have the same type of thing. If you notice in the properties, it all says versatile. But then you get down here to something interesting going on with the bullwhip. It has a lot of properties. It has versatile and reach, just like this long spear has versatile and reach. Versatile meaning you can grab it with 2 hands for that extra +2, and reach increasing your space by 1. So the long spear's there, and the bullwhip is there, but the bullwhip takes it 1 step farther. It adds unwieldy. It's unwieldy. You have disadvantage on attacks within 1 space of you, but like I said before, that gives you that 1 extra point, 1 extra property to gain. So now you gain an impact property. Super cool, and we'll talk more about that in the customization system. But here's another cool example of this multifaceted thing. We have a morning star, a big ball with spikes on it, so the 2 styles you get is hammer or pick. Hammer for the big ball and pick for all the spikes. And the warhammer is literally the example I gave at the beginning. And as you see here, they all have versatile, some of them have guard. The long sword has versatile guard, but the bastard sword has versatile impact. Quarterstaff's in there giving you some guard, giving you some defense. Long spear's in there giving you some reach. Spear's in there for you to throw it a little bit. Let's go. Moving on to 2-handed now, we have The big ones, the big boys, here we go. All of these properties have two-handed, but what you'll notice is all of these other ones, every weapon you've seen so far only really has two properties. And if you're confused by the javelin property, it technically has toss and thrown because they're prerequisites of each. You'll see in a second, right? And then all of these only have two. Oh, but you saw unwieldy gave it an extra budget to get more, right? Same thing with two-handed. You'll notice that two-handed has three because technically two-handed isn't a bonus weapon property. It's technically a negative, which means you have to have two hands for it, which gives you that extra budget to have more properties. And the first one, we had to add this to the list, scythe. We had a big old two-handed scythe, heavy, reach, we got great axe, halberd, war flail, all the stuff. And a really cool addition, and maybe my favorite weapon in the game, is a meteor hammer. I'm gonna put on the screen camera, Zach, show him some meteor hammer footage of us just whipping it around. It's the freaking coolest weapon ever. The meteor hammer is two-handed and unwieldy because it takes a little bit of wind up. It's a whole bit, it's a lot of stuff going on around you, right? And then it's also multifaceted, being you could do chain or hammer properties. It has reach and heavy, bringing it up to 2 damage. And speaking of 2 damage, if you haven't noticed, there's a lot of these weapons that have the heavy property, which is why the damage of all of these goes up to 2. And if you notice about the versatile weapons up here, all of these were also +1 damage. Now, again, versatile property, giving that +2, that does help out, as does impact, but you get the idea. So with this 2 now, heavy, you can only have the heavy weapon property on a two-hander, which in general makes sense. And also for some of y'all looking out here, oh, but if it has an extra, heavy counts as 2 properties in 1. It's the budget cost of 2. You'll see that in the custom system here in a second. But if you look here down at the long pole over here, the staff category, it only deals 1 damage. But why is that? Two-handed, guard, increasing your defense, reach, increasing the range of your attacks, and impact. So it has more properties instead of it being condensed into just heavy and reach. It has guard and impact, which are each their own property valued at 1 point each, which is also why the heavy weapon property is worth 2 points. Flexibility there and keeps the system balanced. Now we can't leave out ranged weapons, and they're separated into 2 categories of bow and crossbow. Now the default thing you need to understand about ranged weapons is all of them by default have an ammo property. It means some sort of ammunition that you're loading into them, bolts, arrows, whatever. They are two-handed by nature, and they are also unwieldy. Now, there are ways that you can remove the unwieldy and remove the two-handed property, which you'll see here in a second, and you'll see in the custom system. But here's the weapons. You have a sling, and then you have your 3 bows. Short bow, long bow, great bow. They all deal 1 damage, except the great bow, which deals 2, because it has that heavy property we talked about. But you have some dynamic choice between each of these options. If you want to be silent, sneaky, and not have disadvantage, not have unwieldy. If you notice, both the long bow and the great bow have unwieldy. If you want to be a little bit more quick moving around, silent also, pick the short bow. 1 damage, but if you want to get extra range, you want to be long ranged, have some impact. You still do have the unwieldy property on there, but you got long range and impact. There you go, pick the long bow. And then with the great bow, yeah, you deal 2 damage. You don't have any other properties. You're still unwieldy. You don't have quite as long a range, but it's 2 damage. You got options and you got choices and they all matter. And it's like, ooh, what weapon do I want? I'm gonna pick this one for now. I could change my style, switch to longbow. Let's do it. Or if you really want to switch your style, try a crossbow. I freaking love crossbows in DC20. Blowgun being one example. I know a blowgun is not a crossbow, but it has the crossbow style. Keep in mind, the bow style is +1 damage on slowed targets. The crossbow style is +1 damage against targets that you've attacked. So even that alone is already a playstyle thing. But another cool thing with crossbows is the reload property, which adds an extra damage. Now, if you notice, oh wait, hold up, blowgun does not supposed to have the reload property. It could have the reload property, and if it did, I'm going to show y'all some dynamic stuff right now. If it did have the reload property, it would deal 2 damage, because like we talked about, reload property, you have to spend an action point to reload, but it increases the weapon's damage by 1. But if I were to remove the reload property, that brings us back down to 1 damage. A lot easier to reload a blowgun, you get the idea. But it's a choice like we just talked about. But now for crossbows that do have the reload property, that's what brings this damage up to 2. And if you notice, it doesn't have unwieldy and it doesn't have two-handed because it's a hand crossbow. And those 2 points we talked about spending have been spent to remove the unwieldy and remove the two-handed properties, making you real versatile, real movable. Let's go. Light crossbow though, doesn't go that route. It does take out the unwieldy, but you also gain impact, making the light crossbow hit a little bit harder. And if you want to hit even harder, here's the two-handed unwieldy, so you got both of those negative properties. Obviously you have ammo. Reload brings the damage up by 1, and heavy brings the damage up by another 1, taking you that 1 damage up to 2, up to 3 damage. heavy crossbow, watch out. And a special shout out for the special weapons in DC20, bolas, nets, and boomerang. Yes, that's right, they are in the game, they're all taken care of. There's a capture property and a returning property, which you can imagine what those do in general. But yes, the bola and net deal 0 damage. But 0 damage in DC20 actually is still possible because you can make an attack for 0 damage. But if you get a heavy hit, what does a heavy hit do in DC20? Adds 1 damage. So yes, we are currently playtesting this concept. Unarmed strikes and weapons like this that aren't really weapons deal 0 damage. Like a shield deals 0 damage, but that still works in DC20. And I still think it will be fine because on a heavy hit, brutal hit, etc., it still deals damage. Is it gonna feel weird if you hit, but you don't get a heavy hit, so then you hit for 0 damage? Is that gonna feel weird? I don't personally think so, because I think you just punch somebody in their armor, and you hit them, but it didn't really do much damage. Now, in the case of these weapons that deal 0 damage, the capture property does make them grappled and other things like that, so that's a whole nother thing. But now for what you've all been waiting for, customized weapons. Timeout. Man, I went from not doing timeouts to doing 2-in-1 video. I'm gonna get a red flag or something. Anyway, I get so legitimately excited to share these updates with you guys because DC20, unlike some other games that we've been talking about right here, is still in the beta. I'm listening to you guys' feedback and there's now 16,000 of you guys. Leave a comment down below, join us on Discord. I love seeing all the different people talk about all the different game stuff, especially when you play it. I really want you to try these things out, see how they feel at the table. Because I'm pretty sure the people that are gonna love the weapon system changes the most are gonna be the people that have played the most to see that, yeah, marshals really did need a little bit. Oh, yeah. But if you haven't already, check out the Kickstarter. This is the time where you're getting the absolute most and biggest value for everything. Yes, things will be available. You'll be able to buy the book afterwards and be able to get the PDF after the Kickstarter's done, but they're going to cost more and not come with all the free stuff that y'all have unlocked from all the stretch goals. Y'all have unlocked 3 free PDFs that you're getting: a 5e conversion guide to convert 5th edition over to DC20. You're getting an entire monster starter pack that comes with a ton of monsters and how to make them and how to tweak them. And there's a completely free one-shot adventure that's going to be released out live to everyone for free in just a few days. So check it out. And if you want to see the whole rules, they are available for free on the Kickstarter. Just go to the Kickstarter, scroll down. I'll have Zach put it on the screen. You'll see the big button, download the rules. There you go. It is the 0.7 version of the game, but that version of the game is available completely for free. And the 0.8 goes out to all Kickstarter backers as soon as the Kickstarter closes, which is in like a week at this point. Here we go. Back to the custom weapon system now. It couldn't be any easier. Y'all have seen the whole system. You understand generally how things work, and I've talked to you about these whole 2-weapon property concept. But here you go. And if you've watched this far in the video, I have a secret little surprise for y'all. I have a resource that I'm going to show you guys that you actually have you can make your own weapons. I'm going to use it here in this video. I'm also going to link it down below, and you all now have unlocked that for staying this long in the video. I appreciate you guys. So check it out. There are 3 steps to this custom weapon system. Step 1, pick your weapon type. Do you want to make a melee weapon or a ranged weapon? Awesome. And if you were watching this video and you're like, wait, where's a trident? Oh no, I want to do a trident. Where's a scimitar? Or if you saw a weapon, you're like, oh, I don't think that should have the concealable property. I want to have impact. Well, sit back because you're about to be able to do anything you want. So anyway, pick a weapon type. Melee weapon, ranged weapon, you get the idea. Melee weapons are 1 space, ranged weapons are 15 spaces, but they automatically come with the ammo, 2-handed, and unwieldy properties. Remember that. That's step 1. Moving on to step 2, pick your weapon style. They're all here. We just talked about them. Here they are. This also has the damage type that the weapon deals: slashing for axes, piercing for bows, bludgeoning, you get the idea. And fist weapons, by the way, can deal bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, depending on how, you kind of spikes or little blades or whatever you want to put on that fist weapon. So pick your weapon style, move on to step 3. Step 3 is where the fun kicks in. Is weapon properties. When you pick a melee or ranged weapon during character creation, you can do this during character creation, or you can ask a blacksmith to add these properties to weapons, which I think that's going to be super cool too. But like, you can go to a blacksmith and you actually can have the blacksmith role play this system technically too. Oh, I want it to be this. I want it to be that. Oh, yeah, I'm going to gotcha. Anyway, you get 2 weapon properties when you're building your own weapon, and you can't grant the weapon the same property more than once. And this tip says that ranged weapons already come with 2-handed and unwieldy. That's part of the package deal that they come with. And on top of that, you have 2 points. So either way, making a melee weapon or ranged weapon, you have 2 points. But what can you spend them on? The same properties we just talked about. And as you notice now, they're all relisted here. So the only difference here is you will see off to the left-hand side how many points this weapon property is worth. And spoiler alert, they're all worth 1, except for unwieldy and two-handed, which we already talked about, and the heavy property. The heavy property is worth 2 points because +1 damage in this system, especially with the numbers scaled down, is powerful. And you'll also notice if you scroll down to the ranged weapon properties, again, these are just repeated, you can see the idea. The reload property costs 0 because the trade-off of spending an extra action point to reload, which increases the damage by 1, but you just spent an action point to reload, that kind of balances out. Actually, it mathematically exactly balances out, but you get the idea. So now how this works is if I'm building a melee weapon, I literally can sit here and be like, okay, all right, I have a one-handed weapon. I want it to be a, let's do a trident. I want it to look like a trident. Okay, well, it's a trident and visually it looks like a trident. So that's gonna be a melee weapon. That's step 1, completed. Step 2, what kind of, what a trident would that be? A spear, that's gonna be a spear. So we'll pick the spear weapon style. But now we get here, and this is the same conversation me and my team had when building the system, is what would a trident have? I'm asking you right now, pause this video, look at this list, build your trident. Because me and my team sure couldn't agree on what the trident should be. There's so many cool things about a trident. How do you want to express your trident for your character? So if you haven't paused the video to do your own and see if me and you are synced up, pause now. Okay, here we go. Okay. Here, my trident would be versatile guard. Or versatile toss. It's such a toss up because I see if someone throwing a trident. I just think that's so iconic. But at the same time, those little, the prongs and stuff, you're gonna be able to catch a weapon between them and like block them easier. No, I'm gonna say versatile toss. I'm gonna lock that in. It's too iconic to throw a trident. I mean, come on. Or if you wanted to just deal more damage, you could pick versatile impact. Or maybe take out the whole versatile aspect and maybe you want to wield a shield and a trident, and that's what you load out for your character's going to be, so you don't even care about the versatile property. Cool. This is the perfect part, and maybe you're seeing how cool this system is don't do versatile. Build a trident with toss and guard. Oh my gosh, you are now the protector of the seas with a shield and a trident. Let's go. But what about that resource that I was talking to you guys about? Here it is. Here is the DC20 custom weapon chart, available for free right now. It's in the very, very bottom of the description. Scroll all the way down. It's nice and buried for y'all down there for only the people that have gotten this far in the video. Thank you. I will continue to keep burying these little nuggets and stuff like this for you guys for who watch, all the videos and stuff. So here we go. Check it out. You can make your own weapon. This sheet was made, shout out to Purius, and the team kind of helped build this together. But Purius is a master at making these things. So you can make your own weapon. Let's go. As you can see, we have a melee weapons up top, range at the bottom, and it has all the properties. Each of these properties have different drop downs for every single weapon property in the game right there. You can pick it and it keeps going. This is your point total right here. You have 2 points available to you. What weapon you want to build? And for melee weapons, it works interestingly because melee weapons, like we've talked about, do not come automatically with unwieldy or two-handed. And if you make a melee weapon, a two-handed weapon, it gains now 3 points because it gives you another property for taking on that negative trait. But unwieldy, if you want to be crazy and close, it's just harder to hit with. Yeah, sure, take that too. Now you got a 4-point budget to spend, but your weapon requires 2 hands and it's unwieldy. You get the idea. So I'm going to take these off for now, and also showcasing ranged weapon, because ranged weapons, if you remember, come automatically with unwieldy and two-handed. So this here is making you remove the property that it's forced to have. You're forced to use 2 hands. It automatically is unwieldy. And if you want to spend points to remove them, you can remove them. And now you can just have a ranged weapon that's not unwieldy and two-handed. Super simple. That's also the idea and the design of this system is, look at this. It is unwieldy two-handed, automatically comes with it, automatically does not come with it, gaining points, you get the idea. Hopefully you see the big picture here, right? So these are all the properties you want to build. So you know what? Let's build that trident. We're going to go here for the wait a second, y'all, with the trident. What if we make the trident two-handed? We get a big old trident. I'm excited now. That gives us more budget to accomplish this fantasy. Okay. So for the property, I got to give the thing guard, right? So that accomplishes the blocking and the blades of the trident. Okay, cool. So then I'm also going to add in toss for sure. So now I'm able to have guard and toss and one more point. You know what? I can't believe I didn't talk about this earlier. Reach. It's a trident. It has reach. So there we go. Reach. Boom. There it is. A big, giant trident that you can thrust, guard, toss, chunk it. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we put this weapon just straight up in the game. That's so cool. And now for ranged weapons, let's say I want to go here and the heavy property. If I pick the heavy property, boom, I spent both of the 2 points. That's all I got. But don't forget, there is the reload property. And if you pick the reload property, it currently actually does take it today. We will have this fixed by the time this video goes live. And if not, we'll fix it, because the reload property, if you remember, is a cost of 0, which would bring the weapon damage up. And also another thing that I'm going to try and do for this is to have somewhere on this that shows the damage that this weapon would deal, so you don't have to manually do that, because technically ranged weapons, or all weapons, start off at 1 damage. This would bring, heavy would bring it up to 2 damage, and reload would bring it up to 3 damage. But I do want to have that somewhere auto-populate, maybe like right here or something. I'll talk to Purius. And also keep in mind this trident, this big, huge trident or whatever that we made with guard and toss and reach, this would deal 1 damage. And if I wanted it to deal 2 damage, I would have to sacrifice 2 of these, because if I try and throw in heavy right now, oh gosh, I'm at -2. Okay, sure. So I'm going to take the reach property off. And to take properties off, you just go down to none, and it automatically does that. And I'll take the toss off, and we will have none. Okay, cool. So there we go. I hope you're excited as I am about this system. Let me know what you guys think. The Kickstarter is approaching the end of the Kickstarter, and we are approaching all of the different stretch goals. We have a 2 million stretch goal of 4 more ancestries that I'm going to be talking about as soon as we get close to hitting that thing. The very next live stream, I'm going to be doing a showcase of a lot of the character art, some of the lore about them. Guys, this whole thing is just so wild and crazy. It hits me. It just hit me right now. It is truly insane what y'all have been able to do with DC20 and what y'all are going to take and turn this game into, what we have possible for us now. The fact that I can just keep making it, the fact that I have the ability now, even just at the most simple level, to keep working on DC20. Thank you for that. Much less where y'all have taken this to, much less the heights that DC20 will rise to. And that's because of y'all. So you got to know that there's a thank you video coming. So stay tuned for that once the Kickstarter is over. And there's also the origin story of the DC20 and how this whole thing started and the behind the scenes stuff. There's lots of stuff to talk to you guys about. But there's the weapon system. Let me know what you think about it. Check out the Kickstarter. It should be on its way out to being closed. And if it already is over and you're seeing this video, you can still check it out, back it. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's coming in the future. So stay creative and think way outside the box. Peace.